Hey everyone, Audrey here. Today we are talking about how to remain calm when someone pushes your buttons. There is no faster way to lose your credibility than to show your anger towards someone when they have done something to anger you. And this is not to say that your anger towards this person is unwarranted. Most likely you have every reason to be angry with this person. But I want you to ask yourself, is being angry at this person a good use of my energy? Is being angry going to solve the issue between this person and I? Is being angry gonna cause this person to act in the way that I want them to act? I can almost assure you that the answer to all of those questions is no, absolutely not. So today I wanted to share with you a better alternative approach to take when someone does something that pushes your buttons. And that is the art of staying unbothered. And it consists of 5 parts. Part 1, don't take anything personally. As someone who by default takes things personally, it used to really piss me off when I would tell somebody about something that someone did that irked me and they would reply with,
"Just don't take it so personally."
and the reason this used to piss me off was because I had no idea how to do this. How do people just not take things personally? It was a mystery to me. But then I read The 4 Agreements by Miguel Ruiz, and it completely changed the way that I interact with people. And one of the 4 agreements that Miguel Ruiz talks about is don't take anything personally. And I'm gonna read to you a quote directly from the book because I don't want to butcher his words because they are perfect. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. When I first read this, I could feel my entire being, just shifting. We are all living in our own realities, and each person is going to have a slightly different reality based on their own unique life experiences. So when we realize this, we can let go a little bit and not take things so personally because the way that somebody behaves towards you is a reflection of themselves, not of you. And for good measure, let's apply this idea to a real life situation. Let's take the all too common occurrence in today's dating world, ghosting. When someone ghosts you, it says much more about that person than it does about you. It's much more of a reflection of that person's emotional and relational immaturity and lack of interpersonal skills and fear of conflict than it is of you as a person. So when we realize this, we realize we can't really get mad at someone for not having good communication skills. It simply is not a good use of our precious, precious energy. So when we realize this, we can remain unbothered, remain cute, and continue living our kick-ass lives. Number 2, don't expect a lot from people. When we set high expectations for other people and they inevitably don't meet them, we set ourselves up for disappointment. And here's an example of where I did this to myself in my own life. So I had a very close friend who over a number of months I noticed was fading out on me. She wasn't texting me as often, she wasn't initiating plans with me anymore. And when I finally approached her about this, I said, "Hey, so I've noticed this pattern and I'm starting to worry because I'm starting to tell myself that you're drifting away from me. And I just wanted to talk about it with you to clear the air. Is that okay with you?" And she responded with, "What do you mean? We just hung out 2 months ago. You're clearly creating a problem out of nothing. This is needy and I told you I'm busy." Needless to say, we were on very different pages about our friendship, and I'm not gonna lie, I was quite hurt by this, and it took me a good minute to get over this. And to get over it, I had to have 2 realizations. Number 1, nobody owes you friendship. Number 2, you can't expect everyone to have the same idea as you of what it means to be a good friend. Now, I've heard some people say that we should have 0 expectations when it comes to other people. And personally, I don't agree with this because that would mean that we would allow other people to potentially treat us poorly. So then the question becomes, how do we hit this balance where we're not setting ourselves up for disappointment, but we're also not allowing people to treat us poorly? Well, stay tuned for part 3. Part 3 to the art of staying unbothered is to have standards. And yes, standards are different to expectations. Expectations are fiction. Standards are facts. And that sweet balance we have to hit is to have high standards and low expectations. So here's my definition of a standard when it comes to dealing with other people. A standard is a requirement or a level of quality that must be met in order for that person to be worth your time and energy. And you can kind of think of your standards like your non-negotiables. They are your laws. They are your truths. Just like the law of gravity is the truth of the universe. When you throw a ball up into the air, it comes back down. And that is that. When someone disrespects you, they are not worth your time and energy, and that is that. And I see standards as being separated into 3 parts, and part 1 is setting the standard. And a good place to start when setting your standards is to think about in the past any situations where someone did something that didn't sit right with you. Let's say that you had dinner plans with a friend and that friend showed up an hour late, and when you asked them why they were late, they said that they lost track of time because they were playing a video game, and this really bothered you. Now that you've identified the incident that irked you, you can think about why did that bother you so much? Maybe it was because that friend wasn't respecting your time, or maybe it was because it felt like that friend was prioritizing video games over your relationship. So there you go. Now that you've identified why that behavior bothered you so much, you now have your standard. My standard is, must respect my time, must have sound priorities. AKA not video games over relationships. So now that we've set our standard, we can move on to part 2, which is maintaining your standard. And maintaining a standard can be much harder than setting one, especially if that person is someone we really like or is an authority figure like a boss or something. So let's go over how we can maintain our standards in these situations. The number 1 key to maintaining your standards is to have the self-respect to believe that you deserve to be treated better. Because remember, standards are your non-negotiables. Just like eating, sleeping, and drinking are your non-negotiables. Non-negotiables are ways that we take care of ourselves and treat ourselves well. And in order for us to treat ourselves well, we have to have the self-respect to believe that we deserve to be treated well. Just like we treat a good friend well because we respect them, we treat ourselves well because we respect ourselves. And part 3 to standards is communicating them to the other person. Now, how do we do this whilst remaining unbothered, especially if we do indeed feel bothered? We need to realize that just because something is a standard or a truth to us doesn't necessarily mean that it's also a truth for the other person. Maybe your friend doesn't care if their friends prioritize video games over them or if their friends are late to their dinner plans. Does this mean that we should be mad at this person? No. Does this mean that this person is a bad person? Also no. It just means that they simply don't have the same truths as us. And when we realize this, we can relax a little bit, and that will help us to come from a calm and collected place when we communicate our standards to them. Hey Henry, I'm really happy to be having dinner with you, and it doesn't really sit well that you were an hour late because you were playing video games, because I start to tell myself that you're prioritizing video games over our friendship, and it makes me sad. Is it okay if next time, if you knew in advance you were going to be late, that you just let me know? And then it's very important to sit back and gauge their reaction. If they own up to it and apologize, then it's probably a good idea that we continue giving our energy to this person. If they get defensive, I wouldn't. But at the end of the day, the important thing here is to not get mad and to stay unbothered if someone doesn't meet your standards. It's kind of like, let's say if a company that was making cookies was coming out with new recipes, and the cookie recipes had to meet the standard before the company started mass producing it. Would the company get mad if a recipe didn't meet their standard? No, they would simply put that recipe aside and move on to the next one. part 4 to the art of staying unbothered is to care more about what you think of you than what others think of you. At the end of the day, when you look yourself in the mirror, all that matters is how you feel about you, not how others feel about you. You get to define your self-worth and your self-image, not other people. That's why it's called self-worth and not other worth. Now, one caveat to this is that it is biologically impossible to not care at all what other people think of us. We are hardwired by evolution to care about what other people think of us. Otherwise, our cavewoman and caveman selves would have been ostracized by our group and we wouldn't have survived out there on our own. But this starts to become detrimental when the opinions of others starts to harm our own self-image or gets in the way of us reaching our fullest potential. And the goal here is to have a sense of self-worth and self-belief anchored so deeply within ourselves that we are unwavering when it comes to the negative judgments and treatments from other people. That even if someone doesn't treat us well, we still have our inherent value, which means that this doesn't bother us either. We're literally unbothered. Our value is unbothered. And the fifth and final part to the art of staying unbothered is to forgive. Now, I've heard a lot of people say that the secret to letting go of a situation that bothered you is to forgive the other person. And this used to make no sense to me. Like,
why would I ever forgive this person? They clearly don't deserve my forgiveness, and by forgiving them, that would make what they did okay, and what they did wasn't okay.
But then I came across this quote, and it put me in my place. Holding a grudge is like eating rat poison, thinking it will kill the rat. And what I took from this quote was, by not forgiving the other person, the only person you're inflicting suffering on is yourself, not the other person. And by forgiving them, you're actually setting yourself free. Forgiveness is about you not hurting whenever you remember what that person did to you. It's about you deserving peace, not necessarily about the other person deserving forgiveness. And by forgiving the other person, it also doesn't make what they did okay. Instead, it means what you did was not okay and you shouldn't have done it, but I'm no longer going to allow the pain you caused me to affect who I am. I'm forgiving you for me, not for you. So forgiveness is for your own mental healing. It's an act of self-love. And if you love yourself, which we all do on this channel, you will end your own torture and let it go. So those are my 5 tips on how to practice the art of staying unbothered. And if you follow them, I promise you that you will stay cool, calm, and collected whenever someone does something that pushes your buttons. Let me know how you practice the art of staying unbothered in the comments. I'd love to hear your take on it. And thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this video. I will see you next Sunday, and until then, stay healthy and stay safe. Bye.